I am Aimee Liu, and I want to welcome you all to Well Published, a live feature of MFA lore. My guest today is Bridget Crocker, the author of the new debut memoir, The River's Daughter. I am so thrilled to have this conversation with Bridget, who is a trailblazer in women's empowerment, a world-class whitewater rafting guide. She led remote river expeditions down river canyons in Zambia, Ethiopia, the Philippines, Peru, Chile, Costa Rica, India, and throughout the Western United States. She's a contributing author to the Lonely Planet guidebooks and the Best Women's Travel Writing series from Traveler's Tales. And last week, I interviewed Bridget in print about the emotional journey of writing her memoir. I don't know if this is showing up backwards, but whatever. And that was such a great conversation about how rivers have saved her life. I've been telling everybody I meet this book is better than Cheryl Strayed's Wild, and I am not exaggerating that. I think it is a better book on so many levels that I don't want to diss Cheryl Strayed, but really this is a better book. So Bridget, last week was your book birthday. How's the
Yeah,
launch going?
June 3rd. Thank you, Amy, so much for having me here today. It's really a pleasure. And your questions are always so thoughtful and have gotten me thinking about a lot of things about my own work. So I appreciate that. The launch has been great. It's getting a tremendous reception and there's a lot of buzz. And so it's been very exciting.
Where are you going? We were talking a minute ago about your
Yeah.
book tour.
Yeah, so I'm based in Malibu, California, and I've done a few kind of local things along with, I just was in San Diego uh, the day before yesterday, and then this afternoon I'm going up to Summerlin to Godmother's to do an event there this evening, actually at 7. If anybody's in the Summerlin area, come join us. I think there's still a few spots left. It's at 6 o'clock, sorry, 6 o'clock at Godmother's. And then I head up north and I go to San Francisco to Book Passage and then to Powell's in Portland and Roundabout Books in Bend. And then I get a little bit of a break. And then I head up to Jackson, Wyoming, where I'm from and where a lot of the book takes place. And I do a couple of events there. One of them, actually, I'm super excited about. One of the girls that I grew up with in Jackson, and we were Girl Scouts together. She bought the bookstore in our hometown, and so I'm
Oh,
doing
fun.
my event at her bookstore. And one of our other classmates that we grew up with is going to be interviewing me, so that'll be super fun. And then I go to Idaho Falls and Ketchum, Idaho, then I have a little bit of a break, and then I go to Montana, and I'm at in Hamilton at Chapter One Books, Missoula at Fact and Fiction, and Helena at Montana Book Company. That's July 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then little break, and then I go to Salt Lake City at King's English, and then I'm Denver and Durango and Crested Butte. I finish in Crested Butte. So it's a robust tour.
I can't believe you can keep them all in your head. That was impressive.
Well, we've been planning all the events for the last 6 months at least. So it's amazing. There's so much that you don't realize that goes into the tour, finding the conversation partner, getting the gig, the dates, the logistics. And yeah, so I've been working on all these. It's like throwing a party in all these different places. So there's a lot of details that come together for each event.
Yeah, the best part of the book tour I found is meeting up with old friends in all of these different places. I haven't been on a book tour in a while, and I really miss that part of the whole publishing experience.
Yeah, that's been wild already so far. Just people from different walks of life. My mom friends, and then I've got river friends, and people that are showing up. So just that, having
Yeah,
all the different parts of my life coming together. It's been really fun.
exactly. So this is your first book, and it's a memoir of coming of age as a tough, even intrepid whitewater rafting guide. but really in many ways it's about how the river raised you, often in spite of your parents. And a big part of I wanted this conversation to be about the publishing process and getting the book, sort of out into the world. A big part of that is the elevator pitch.
Mhm.
So, what was the elevator pitch, the thumbnail sketch of the book that you used when you first started querying?
Yeah, the elevator pitch is key, and I was super lucky. I came across something early, like when I'd finished my manuscript, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go to market, but I have just no idea how to make, like, where to begin or how to do that. And right about that time, I came across a class called Author Branding by Andrea Guevara, and like everything in my body was like, yes, I need this class. And I remember like doing the pitch to my husband, like, I need to take this class. And, it was a bit of a reach financially, but I just knew like this is the thing that I need to get ready to go out. And one of the things that we worked on in that class was the elevator pitch. So I had it just super tight. She has a whole curriculum, website, elevator pitch, all these different parts that you need when you're going to market. So the elevator pitch that I used and that worked great was it's a coming of age literary memoir that it's about me growing up on the banks of the Snake River in Jackson, Wyoming to escape a troubled childhood. And I developed a special relationship with the river that led me into a career as an international river guide that allowed me to escape my childhood and family. And I moved to the Zambezi River and worked on the Zambezi, where I saw from a different cultural point of view and learned about myself and my family, and was able to then bring that new perspective back to my family, where we were able to work together to overcome cycles of poverty and abuse that had plagued our family for generations.
So, how much of that pitch could you have written when you started the writing process on the book?
I don't know that it was just a way of distilling these different parts of it. And, like, how was I going to package it? How are we going to package the book? And I
Was it
think,
different from your original vision for the book, or was it
I mean,
consistent
all
with
the
what you
elements were
started
there.
out with?
Yeah, all the elements were there. It's just highlighting different things in because to me it's a coming of age memoir. It also is I'm a travel writer by trade, and a guide, so it's an adventure book and a travel book, but those are different lanes, so it's ultimately, I packaged it as a literary memoir that happens to be set on rivers, so it has a crossover appeal, but instead of like just putting it in the lane of adventure memoir, which would be like Tim Cahill and some of Pico Iyer and Andrew McCarthy, where it's just really about the travel, or like Anthony Bourdain, it's more in the genre, in the wheelhouse, in the genre, and the lane of I mean,
Cheryl
my
Strayed.
my publisher, their easy quick one is like it's educated meets wild, but I really wanted it also to, I
Mhm.
loved the Glass Castle and Mary Carr's The Liars Club, and Alexandra Fuller's Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight. So that was kind of what I was aiming for, and how I wanted mine. When I go, this is funny, but I go to the bookstore all the time, and I would just sit there and like imagine my book on the shelf, and I would go to the what section am I in, and I would look at the books there that I wanted my book to be next to, and I really looked at how they were packaged and how they were branded, and who were their agents, who were their publishers, and I kind of started to create a list of, these are the people that I want to work with who produce these kinds of books.
That's a terrific exercise. I think everybody should do that if they've got a book that's getting anywhere near publication, or even if you're just starting and trying to envision what it is you're working on. I think that's really a superb idea. Um, so when you were, well, I was going to ask, did you start writing this before, during, or after you were doing the travel guide writing?
Kind of all of those. It had different stages. So when I first started writing, I mean, I started journaling it when I was in, on the river and doing these trips. So I would kind of jot down notes and write, sort of sketches of scenes in my mind. I didn't yet know that I was writing this memoir. I knew that I would be writing something, magazine stories, or, I always wanted to be a writer. And I went to school at Montana State University in English literature and writing, and also at the University of Montana. I studied writing there, so I knew that and I studied anthropology and minored in Native American studies. So I'm a closet anthropologist, and a traveler, a world citizen. So I knew that I wanted to and I hate to use the word capture, but just like distill
Yeah,
and
yeah.
have these scenes, and just moments and feelings and kind of snatches of different things. And I knew that it would be something, but I didn't know what. And then, in college, I was writing these stories, and I actually wrote a collection of poems. It started as kind of a collection of poems that when I went to the Livingston Writers Workshop with Tim Cahill in, I think it was like 1999. And I just brought this a collection of poems with me, that was how I got some of these harder emotional scenes out. I couldn't really write them yet, but I could, really kind of like create the feeling of them in a poem. And then those poems kind of just spread out and grew connective tissue into each other. But it was like I mean, first you have to get the puzzle pieces, and then you can start
Mm.
building with the pieces. So a lot of these scenes and chapters started as a, a poem, uh,
Oh,
and then fleshed out more. And then like the moment when I decided like I'm writing this memoir and kind of had the idea and the scope, was when I saw a friend of mine's book in Barnes and Noble. I walked in and it was like the display right when you walk in. And we had been early writing partners and traded our work, when we were girls. And I just was so moved and, just flabbergasted, and
yeah.
the experience of walking in and seeing her book like that. And I actually fell to my knees in the store and started crying. And that was the moment, like in my mind, because I didn't really, I mean, it didn't really land inside that people like me could publish books. And when one of my best friends did it, I was like, she did it. I could do it. And that's when like the seed was planted. Like I'm doing it. I'm writing this book.
How old were you?
I was 32.
Mm.
31 or 32 years old. Yeah, it was like 2001. So maybe I was 30. I was 30.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. So, on this same kind of note, when I went to your book event last week at Diesel, you shared that you'd been through a lot of therapy and that had helped with the writing of the book. And I know that a lot of writers can identify with their working through trauma on the page and writing memoirs of, awful things that they've experienced and confusing things they've experienced. And I wonder how, not so much how much of the therapy came into the page, but how different you think the book might have been if you hadn't done the therapy. Could you have written this book without the therapy, do you think?
No,
Or it would just be
no,
done something
like
different?
no, it would just be me vomiting my, sad story onto the page, and nobody wants to read that. Trust me. I mean, I have those journals here, um, but yeah, um, and that's just like the raw form. And when I, um, when I ended up, sorry, my husband's trying to do something with our dog, and it distracted me for a minute. Um, I think like when I got into therapy and I really started to do the emotional work to heal the traumas that I talk about and write about in the book, um, then I could write about them in a way that wasn't like I had an axe to grind or I had some kind of an agenda, but it was just I was the charge was off of the scene. The charge was off of the writing, and I could
Mhm.
then use the and the I always wanted to use this book as, to use my family story as an example to others, just to use as an example of how one family overcame these cycles. I wanted to keep the focus on the cycles and not on blaming anybody, pointing any fingers, um,
Mhm.
or like having it be a revenge piece. I
Mhm.
wasn't interested in that. I was interested in elevating um, and helping other people elevate the quality of their relationships in families that are difficult or dysfunctional or estranged, and how do you overcome that? And without the therapy, I wouldn't be able to talk about it in a way that didn't feel like personal.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because now I
It
see it as like it's a story. We all have a lot of us have very similar stories,
Yep.
and this is just one among many.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think with my students, I often found something I was saying over and over again with memoir, especially that you really can't write a memoir until you're far enough away from it that you have perspective on it. You want to do exactly what you did, which you journal to get the notes of the raw experience as it's happening, so that you can go back to those notes. But what you bring in a memoir is all the perspective, the bigger picture, the context, all of that, and therapy
And
really, really
the
helps.
crafting part of it, the literary part, I wanted to write a literary memoir, so that meant it had to be, crafted in a specific way, and if I let the emotion and, you know, the feelings that I had about it and about what happened to me drive that narrative, it was gonna be vastly different than the crafted when I let the artist drive the narrative.
Exactly. So when did you know that the manuscript was crafted well enough to sell? That's a
Well,
terrible decision.
it is, it's agonizing, and I worked with several like, 3 different writers groups over the 22 years that I worked on this manuscript, and, I also raised 2 children during that time, so don't be scared, folks. Yours probably won't take 22 years, but I had a lot going
Oh, mine do.
on. I had a lot going on during the time, and so I was working with writers groups, and this is the well, it was the 8th draft when I was like, "It's ready." And this is the 9th draft, because I did it one more time, which very lightly edited, with my editor, Cindy Spiegel at Spiegel and Grau. I mean, I was like, "Really? Don't you have more notes for me?" Like, I'd love more. But I think when I put it all together and I felt like, "Okay, it's clean." Like, everything, it flows through. I actually had the experience of sending it to an agent at about like draft 4. I had a friend here in Malibu, and he was like, "You should send it to my sister. She's a literary agent." And I was like, "Really? Okay." And I looked her up, and she was like Toni Morrison's agent and Mary Carr's agent. And I was like, "Oh
Yikes.
my God." So I wrote her and I was like, "Hi, your brother Tom suggested that I contact you." And I sent it to her, and she was very gracious, and she asked for the full manuscript right away, and she had 4 people read it, and then she got back to me like a week later, which I did not expect, and she said, "We were really on the fence with this, but ultimately we thought that it has a tone issue that needs to be addressed, and I've included all the notes from the 4 readers that I had on this, and they're very unvarnished. So, know that nobody thought that you were going to see these." And so then I asked her, like, if I can figure out, like, if I can address the tone issue, like, whatever that is. I had no idea what she even meant by that. If I could address the tone issue, would you be interested in taking another look? And she was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I remember reading those notes and feeling like gutted because they were pretty brutal. But what I got from that, what was amazing about them was that they showed where the cracks were in the manuscript. They showed me what needed attention, and I gathered that the tone issue was how I was talking about myself as a character, because as a woman growing up in our society, like we're socialized to, and a lot of us, not just women, but we're socialized to not brag. We're socialized to, not be grandiose and be self-deprecating. And this is a story about a protagonist who's a hero. And if I don't believe in that, and I'm not giving the reader a hero and somebody to root for, if I'm not rooting for them, like no one's rooting for her. So I really had to go through and be very intentional about how I was, portraying myself as a character and talking about myself. Like the hero is not, uh, berating themselves for choices that
Mhm.
they've made throughout. You need to be able to believe in the hero. So that was a big, that was the fourth incarnation of
Mm.
the fourth draft. And then from there, I was able to refine it and refine it. And then I still didn't know if it was ready. I mean, it's funny. This is like the longest answer to like, when did you know it was ready? I still
No,
was
it's
like, maybe
hard.
it's not ready. I don't know. Um, and I think I still believe it's not ready. Like, but at some point, I just had to be like, okay, I'm pushing send and I'm just putting it out there and just continuing to. And what I've learned now is to not be so precious about it. Like, I used to, I went through a period where I beat myself up that I sent, my manuscript to one of the top literary agents and it wasn't ready, and I blew it. And she ended up not being my agent. And by the time I came back to her, she had retired. So I,
Oh,
it's like,
really?
that's how
Oh,
long it took me to fix the tone issue. Um,
wow.
so she ended up not being my agent. But the great news was that she was somebody along the journey who gave me great notes at a time when I needed them. And that was her role in the journey. That was what she was meant to do. And it was, like not getting caught up in like this person has to play this role. And if I didn't, I mean, I was really hard on myself about like, oh, I wasn't ready. And, and a friend of mine was like, look, did you read the first line in the email that she sent back to you? It says, we were almost on the fence about this. Like she almost took it, right out of the
Yeah.
gate. You weren't even ready. And
Yes.
like she almost took it. So like, let's stay focused on that. And yeah, not thinking that it has to be perfect because it's not going to be perfect. Even when did send it to my agent, she had a couple of notes, not very many, but it's never perfect. And even now, like I read through it and I'm like, oh, there's a typo or there's a mistake. Like it's never perfect. There's always going to
Yeah.
be something in there.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great story, though, and it illustrates, alas, how valuable it is to have connections. Because it was your connection who was her brother, and that helped get you that very quick read and turnaround. And it
Yeah.
is my experience in this business too, is that basically you have to lean on every connection you can possibly find because
That's
most of the
right.
business is done that way.
Well, and I had at one point, I think this is a important story to share. At one point, I had a connection with somebody, and I was like, I think my book's ready. I'm not sure, and she said, it's not ready. What you need to do is get a ghost editor and pay somebody to basically a developmental editor to go through and get it ready. And this was kind of early on. And I thought, oh, okay, because I was naive and I didn't know how the business. And that's the other thing. Like I was so afraid that I didn't know what the business was, and that I was, just going to be like a sheep cast to the wolves or something. And I was naive. So
Mhm.
I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I guess I need to do that and get a developmental editor. So she recommended somebody. And this person, they recommended her, she's highly regarded, or I thought she was pretty highly regarded in the publishing business. And I hired this editor. I give her my manuscript. I give her half the money, it was a stretch for us at the time to pay this money.
Yeah.
Um, and she sat on it for 6 months and made no changes.
No.
And, I'm like panicking, like tick-tock, like there's this urgency, right? When you're a writer,
Oh,
like, oh, I need to get this out here, somebody's gonna scoop my book or somebody's gonna beat me to it, or I don't know what that is, that urgency, but I was like freaking out that this was taking so long and she wasn't giving me any notes. And finally I was like, she basically was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just so busy, I can't do it, I don't have anything for you." So we parted ways, she kept my money, and,
She kept your money?
yes, she did, and,
That's
it was a lesson to me that I was
outrageous.
so afraid of being taken advantage of, that I got taken advantage of.
Oh, Bridget, that's awful. She
No, it's a
should
learning
give you that
experience.
money back.
Well, I got it back, in another way. So, my point is, though, after that, I was like, "Yikes." This was someone I trusted who recommended this other person, and I realized, like, she must be getting a kickback from this editor. Like, they have a relationship. There must be something there. And that's when I just, it was like, I'm gonna have to just focus and lean on my writing group. The local people, the local writers that I'm in community with already who I trust. And that's, because I've spent all my money on this thing that didn't pan out. And I was gun shy to try again. So that's what I did. I just worked with my writers group, and that was a wonderful experience. It took a long time. It took 3 years of working with the final writers group, the Malibu Writers Circle, was the last writers group that I worked with, to just really kind of go through everything with a fine tooth comb and just really get it tight.
Yeah, and they're professional writers, right? They're
Yes,
authors themselves, which
yes.
makes a huge difference. It's
It
not
does,
just
and
your
yeah,
next
the
door
first
neighbor.
the first group I was in, I think was, I mean, again, everybody and everything showed up at just the right time. Like, the first group I was in was a group of really caring, wonderful women, and like, if somebody didn't cry during the session, like, we called ourselves the carpet sniffers because somebody was always laying on the carpet crying and sniffing. So that was the name of our writers group. And it was kind of in there, there would be a lot of like patting of the back, and just really like, processing the emotions together, because all of us were working on hard things. And then the second group I was in, were two like prominent magazine writers and travel writers. And so we went through it kind of from that lens, and that elevated it to another level. And then the third group was the Malibu Writers Circle, where it was more professional published authors who were very smart about craft, very smart about dialogue. Very smart about like snipping out inauthenticities, and it was kind of
Mhm.
brutal. I'll be honest. It was kind of a brutal group, and
What you need.
yeah, and it's a memoir about like sexual trauma, physical abuse, family dysfunction, like all these things that are difficult and triggering. So what I did when they were discussing my piece is because I would kind of just go on a blackout, and I couldn't really listen to what they were saying. So I would record them, and, then I could, like, listen to it in the car when I was driving the kids around to water polo and swimming or whatever. I could kind of, like, casually and very relaxed listen to what they were saying for a few days. I would play it over and over, and then I would be like, "Okay, I like that. I don't like that suggestion," and then I would integrate it. I would listen to it again as I was making notes on a hard copy, and integrate it, the things that I like take what you like and leave the rest. I would integrate the things I liked into it. And but it was a process where I think I was always realizing like I had to be able to separate the emotion from the story, and the product that it ended up becoming, the story. So I had to take myself out of it at a certain point. Like Bridget, the person this happened to, really kind of was not at the table
Mhm.
anymore, and it was, um, I had to replace it, but there was a process to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a note here. It's so small I can't really tell who sent it, but you changed your tone from zero to hero. Is didn't you need a character arc of change that took you from one to the other? Which is a really interesting question, dovetailed with what you just said, because you had to take the author out of the character in order to see the actual arc of the character from a distance, right? I mean,
Well, I
isn't that
had the
part of it?
benefit to answer this question. I had the benefit of starting. It starts when I'm 9 years old and I'm a child, and it ends when I'm 23. So you see the character growth and the arc as I grow up, and you start to see me being confronted kind of with the same situations over and over, but in different formats, different cultures. But it's kind of the same power dynamic. I mean, this book is really. all about the same thing, which is the conflict surrounding power and colonialism, sexism, racism, family dynamics, dysfunctional families. It's all about shifting power. Who has it? And how are people trying to get it?
Mm.
How are people dominating each other? How are we, putting ourselves in situations to be dominated? How do we break out of that? And so it's the same kind of setup where being dominated and you see how I respond differently. I start responding differently and I get different outcomes and like some of them don't go so well.
Mhm.
There's a scene in Zambia where I end up getting, responding in a really aggressive way and being thrown in a pool at a party and being put in danger. Um, so then I kind of refine it, like, okay, maybe like setting the house on fire isn't great, but like, so how can I get in there and like still stand up for myself, defend others, and not come at it so directly. And you see me like refining that until I finally, come into and become an empowered person who's capable of in real time, setting boundaries is what it is with people uh, who are predators and who are coming at me.
God,
So that arc, that's the arc
that's a
that
great overview of the book. It's really, really incredible because that colonial piece is masterful. So back to the business of this. You ended up being represented by Nashville agent Lauren McLeod of Evitas
Avitas,
Creative
yeah,
Management. How do you
yes,
say it?
Avitas.
Avitas. How did you end up with her? Tell us that story.
Well, again, my dad was very fond of saying, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." And my wealth is in my
Yeah.
relationships. And so, one thing that I did, when I was in the bookstores and I would look at books like mine that I liked, that I wanted my book to be like or be published like or be packaged like, right? So one of them was Wild. And in the back of Wild, in the back of any book, in the acknowledgments, probably in the first or second paragraph, the author is going to thank their agent and their publishing house. Um, so
Unless
I
they're a
start
jerk. Some authors are jerks, and they
well,
don't do that, but most are very
most
nice.
of them are like, thank you to my agent. Like, and here's mine. Second paragraph. I think Todd Schuster, the co-founder of Avitas, and my agent Lauren McLeod. And um, so when I started making a list of like agents that represented books like mine, and I noticed that and agencies too, and then I started kind of through Publishers Marketplace too. I would do searches for who represented what book and sold it to what publishing house, and you could start to see patterns as well when you start really looking into that and digging into that. You see, oh, this agent really works with this publishing house a lot, and um,
Mm,
seeing those
mm,
relationships because it's all
mm.
relationships. So I noticed that Cheryl Strayed was at Avitas, and that's that. I was like, I
Oh,
want to be where Cheryl Strayed is. I liked how her book was packaged, how well it did, how it went out into the world. So I was very focused on Avitas, and I, um, was on the lookout all the time for like, who do I know that has a connection to Avitas? And it turned out that my daughter's best friend, we'd been in ballet with them since my daughter was like 18 months old. We did Parent and Me ballet, but her best friend's parents had a friend who published a book and was represented by Avitas. I noticed when I read his acknowledgments, and I was like, oh, if I could talk to uh, this friend of a friend, maybe I might be able to figure out and maybe put a good word in for me or just like tell me about his experience. And so I asked our mutual friend if they would mind introducing me and that I was curious about his experience at Avitas. And so he was very gracious and talked to me and sent an email out immediately to Avitas, like, look at here's somebody you want to look at. And yeah, within a week they responded to me. I sent and they asked me for the full manuscript within a week. I sent it and I thought, like, surely they won't get back to me for months, right? Because that's what I heard, that it takes like 6 months or something. So I went on vacation. I went to Yosemite for a week and I was reading Go as a River by Shelley Reed, which is a beautiful, beautiful book. And while I was sitting next to the South Fork of the Merced River, having this lovely vacation with my family, and I finished reading Go as a River, and I was like petting it and crying because it's so, so beautiful. And I was like, who published this book? If my book was like this, would be amazing, you know? And I noticed it was Spiegel and Grau that published it. And I just kind of filed that away, like, gosh, I would love to have my book be treated so, I mean, it's just the quality of it and just how beautiful everything is about, the books that they produce. And then I, like, got into reception and, like, I'm getting all these messages, like, ding, 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 and it's all these messages from Avitas saying, like, we wanna represent you. We heard you might be talking to some other people. Can you please get in touch with us? Like, they're panicking that I'm
My
not getting back
God!
to them, and I've been, off grid. So I'm like, "I can't believe this," it
Play
was very
hard to get, and
it
it
was so
always
surprised. Yeah, I was just, like, completely, "Oh, she's not answering us," and I was just doing my thing, and so when I called back, I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to talk more," and I, had also submitted to a couple of other people through friends who, gave me introductions, and then those folks came back too, and so I had, like, 3 agents who were interested at the same time, and, I interviewed each of them and kind of like, "What do you have to offer?" I wanted, somebody who had film rights in-house. I had like a list of things that I wanted somebody that was small. I wanted a boutique agency where I wasn't gonna get lost in the fray, that I was gonna, have personal attention. And my agent and I wanted I wanted to have a relationship like Jerry Maguire, right? Where, like, my agent and I are one. And I actually watched that movie a lot while I was, like, looking for my agent. I was like, my agent and I are one. Like, I wanted that kind of a relationship. I didn't want to just be like, somebody that was on a very large roster that never got any kind of, attention, or, like, you couldn't. I mean, you hear these stories about people like, "I wrote my agent, 3 months ago, and I haven't heard anything." Like, oh my god, I would die if my agent did not write
happens all the time.
back. No, my agent responds, like, within 5 minutes every time I write her or text her or anything, and we have a very good, close relationship. Um so yeah, that's why I chose Lauren, because, and she was very smart, and I also looked at her track record, like, has she had experience with six-figure deals? I wanted a six-figure deal, and, um, so I sorry about that. I, wanted to, I had this sort of checklist of things that I wanted, and she more than met all of those things, so I went with the Vitas. And then, when they asked, she was very open about, like, here are the editors that I've worked with and the people that I'm going to send your book out to. Is there anybody you want to add to the list? And I was like, yes, I would like to send it to Cindy Spiegel at Spiegel and Grow. And she's like, interesting. Okay, we love Cindy. They only take 12 titles a year max, so it's a pretty tough, market. But, that would be amazing. And I was like, yeah, that's on my vision board. That's what I want, and so she sent it to Cindy, and Cindy got back within 2 weeks and was like, I love it. I want it. And when Cindy Spiegel wants something, she does not wait around for other people to get a chance at it. She loves a preempt. So we sold it in a preempt.
Oh my god, that's
So
amazing.
from
Yeah,
when
I've
I
gotta
s-
share before we go on, I
yeah,
gotta share what she did for you, because the advanced reader's copy of The River's Daughter opens with a personal letter from Cindy. She describes reading your manuscript on a cross-country flight. Quote, "With tears in my eyes and a full heart," she describes your memoir as a propulsive story of finding hope and belonging in a life outdoors, and says, "I knew we had to publish it." Pretty high praise. I did not know they only publish 12 books a year. That's
I don't even
incredible.
think they've gotten to 12 yet. That's their, like, max. That, because I asked her recently, like, how many have you published? And I think that total since 2021, when they started, total, she said something like 23. So they're not even up to 12 a year.
I didn't realize
And
they were such a new publisher. I don't know why I
well,
thought they
I mean, they have a lot of experience, with other publishers. They built Riverhead Books. Julie and
Mm.
Grau and Cindy Spiegel were the founding editors there, and built Riverhead Books to what it is. And then when it was acquired by Random House, then they ended up starting their own publishing house, and they were
Mm.
Spiegel and Grau. And then when they merged with Penguin, they got cut uh, from Random House Penguin, or Penguin Random House. And so, a lot of they are known as such tastemakers in the industry, and just so highly regarded. All the other big five publishers were clamoring to get them to come to join them. And they were like, do we really want to just start over and build this for somebody else? Like, why don't we just do this for ourselves? We know how to do it. We know what we're doing. And we want to do it. We don't want to have 384 titles a season that we have to, because that's just insanity to have so many authors and titles. And of course you can't put the energy that you want to into 384 titles. So they wanted to just publish,
Mm.
the few books that they loved, and put everything that they have into those books.
Wow. They describe themselves as a multi-platform publisher encompassing audio and other media. What does that actually mean for you as their author?
So they have a film team that's great, and is working with my film team at Avitas. So that's a really wonderful partnership that benefits everybody. And then they also have a deal with Spotify, and they produce podcasts from various authors. Like Stephen Ranella is one of their authors, and he does the Meat Eater show and podcast. So that's with Spotify. And when I recorded the audio version of my book, I went to the Spotify studio in Los Angeles, and we recorded it with them. And then the book, you can get the book on Spotify. Like, if you are a member of have a subscription to Spotify, you can just, I think you get a certain amount of audiobooks, per month, for free as part of your membership. So you can just pick it up there. But you can also get it on Audible as well, or wherever, or Libby, wherever you get audiobooks. But they have that relationship with Spotify, which is great. And it was kind of fun. I made the River's Daughter Spotify playlist that mentioned, because there's a lot of music mentioned in my book. So all of the songs that are mentioned in the book are in a playlist on Spotify as well.
Oh, that's so fun. Did
Mhm.
did you have a choice about, narrating the audiobook, or was it a given, or how did that work?
No, not a given. My agent, Lauren, actually fought really hard to maintain a clause in my contract, that says that I have the option to audition for the audiobook. And so I auditioned and got the part, which was amazing. And then I was able to narrate it. But, it's not a given that you're going to narrate your own book.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Moving on then. In our print interview, which you guys can read on MFA Lore, all about more of the story part of this, you mentioned that you have at least one sequel, kind of already in the works because when you decided to end this memoir in your 20s, there was still a lot more to go. My question now is, has the experience of writing this book changed your approach to the ones that are coming later, in any way? Are you going to do something different in writing these next books than you did with the first? Maybe faster?
Well, I mean, the main thing that's going to be different is I'm not going to be wandering around in the wilderness for 22 years trying to figure out how to get it published and how to get an agent. Those things are already in place. So it's kind of like I have
Yeah.
this mechanism set up now that where I can, and I mean, it's quite a luxury and a privilege to be able to write something. I don't even have to go to a writer's group if I don't want to. I could just give it to my agent, who does editorial work as well.
Mm.
So, that, and it's also in my contract that Spiegel and Grau gets first crack at my next book. So hopefully I can just stay in the Spiegel and Grau family. It would be amazing. And, be producing these books in much more relaxed way, I think. Um, that would just take so much pressure off of the whole
Mm.
process. I mean, I felt like there was so much pressure of the unknown. of how like having to educate myself on how it worked, taking like tons of classes and workshops and talking to people. I mean, I was just consumed with being a student of the publishing world and process, where I have that experience now and I'm set up in a way professionally that enables me to just do the work and not be so consumed with how do I get that work
Mhm.
produced. That's like
Mhm.
handled by my team. I have a team. So that's which is a trick. I have a team. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean that's a huge difference right there. So, ideally, it
Well,
will not be 22 years before the second book comes out.
yeah, also because you've got a very specific wheelhouse that you're writing in. It's not like, gosh, what's my next idea going to be? Am I going to write a memoir? Am I going to write a novel? I'm going to, a lot of people have that after they publish one book, they don't necessarily have the path to the next one ready to go. Yeah, and so I that's huge. Um Last question has to do with your life and the balance and I kept thinking as I was reading your book because it's so high adrenaline. It's so outdoors, it's so physically active and all of that, and my experience of writing is it's so sedentary. So how do you balance? Are you still that physically active? Is being outdoors and rafting and all of that still as big a part of your life as it used to be, or how do you live?
Yeah, so I was just on the Kern River on Saturday to celebrate my daughter's birthday. That's what she wanted to do for her birthday was go rafting, and so we did that. We take trips as a family every year, and I also go to Costa Rica every year. One of the most common questions I get is, "What's your favorite river?" And of course, the Snake River, my home river, is one of my favorites. But after that, I think it's the Pequari River in Costa Rica, and so
Mhm.
I lead women's adventure wellness retreats on the Pequari River, and I go there every year around my birthday because that's what I want to do for my birthday, and do these wonderful women's workshops, writing, and a friend of mine comes and does Ayurveda, and we do yoga and zip lining and rafting. There's like a whole curriculum, which is super fun. Um, but yeah, that stuff's all built into my life. I try to get outside every day and go for a hike or go for a paddle um, but there is, a huge component of being sedentary. And also I'm not, 20 years old working as a commercial river guide, day in and day out, which is a lot of burnout. And
Mm.
so I kind of feel like it's luxurious sometimes because I get to sit down because working as a guide is really like arduous and strenuous work, and with a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
And where you're working like super long hours, like before dawn to after, doing dishes in the dark,
Mm.
and working really hard. So like to just sort of sit down at my computer to me off, I'm always like, wow, whose life is this? This is pretty amazing to not have to be, busting my tail all the time, but to get to do it like for fun and for free, to go out and enjoy nature and not be like schlepping heavy stuff all the time.
And now it's rewarding you in all these new ways,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah. And
really, really
I do it
fantastic.
with my family, and it's something we just love to do and share. Like going off the jump rock. There's a scene at the end of my book, where I jump off the jump rock on the Kern with my father. And, um, it was such a pleasure to be there with my daughter, and it was her 16th birthday, which there's a chapter about my 16th birthday in the book, and just to have like such an amazing full circle moment of being at that jump rock of my daughter's 16th birthday, and she's jumping off, and there's just such a different outcome because of the work my father and I did together
Mm.
to overcome these obstacles and cycles to that my daughter doesn't have that going on, and she had just the loveliest 16th birthday in a place that's really special to our family.
Yeah, I've gotta say the character arc of your father in this story is one of the most, inspiring, changes I've ever seen, certainly in life. It's right up there, and, I just think you handled it so elegantly in storytelling of this book.
Thank
So,
you. That
really
was big
congratulations on
part of
that.
it, for me, in telling this story was really showing what an extraordinary human being my father was, and how how hard he worked and how far he came and how much heavy lifting he did in overcoming those cycles, those generational cycles for us.
Yeah, yeah. It's and you didn't mince words with how tough it was in the beginning either. So, I
No,
mean, it's really didn't let him off easy, but,
no.
yeah, it's an extraordinary relationship that you shared. So, I think we're practically an hour, Bridget. I could talk to you forever, but this has been really so much fun, so exciting. Um I just can't say enough how wonderful I think this book is and how impressed I am with you
You know,
and how you went about doing it all. I mean, it's just incredible. So,
thank you. I
thank
noticed
you.
that there were a couple little questions. I would love to answer
Sure,
them if we have time, if people are up for
if you
it.
can see them. Yeah.
There was one that some I caught one that caught my eye that said, "How did you deal with people asking you when your book was gonna be done for 22 years?" Um, I love I love that question, and I have a fun story for you. It's hard because every time you see somebody like, "Oh, you're still working on that book, like, are you ever gonna finish that book?" And I even had people say, like, "You're never gonna finish that book." And I have to tell you, and I'm very determined. When somebody tells me I'm not gonna do something, like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I have to tell you that at my book signings, the last few book signings that I've been at, there have been a few people who are in that category of saying, like, "You're never gonna finish that book. Like, what are you still doing?" Who are in my line with their book, and they were crying. They were crying because they were so, like, inspired and couldn't believe it. Like, they were just blown away. So I'm here to tell you, like, you just keep going. It doesn't matter what they're saying. It doesn't matter for how long. You know that you got this thing in your heart that you've got to get out there, and you just stay true to that. And the rest of it will be gravy down the road.
Great. Oh, thank you so much, Bridget. Any of you who want to read more about the book, you can read our interview in MFA Lore. This video will be out probably Saturday morning, along with a transcript. And I also want to let you know that if you are interested in the agent part that we talked about, I'll be doing another live Authors Unlimited with Darian G. and Katie G. Salisbury on Friday, June 20th at 12 p.m. So you won't want to miss that. Same basic time on Friday, the 20th. So thank you all. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you for
Best
coming,
of luck.
everybody. And thank you for
Keep
hosting
going.
me. Thanks
Oh,
so much. And thanks for reading, everybody. I appreciate everybody's comments and so many beautiful reviews on Goodreads. I'm just so grateful that it's reaching so many people and helping a lot of folks too. So thank you for having me.
all right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.